But perhaps subtraction is a better way to think about this moment that we're in. Subtract effective governance in the face of a crisis. Subtract 250,000 American lives. Subtract the dignity of a commander-in-chief acknowledging what that loss means for this country. And that is the math problem that Trump has never understood. That his fate was tied to the fate of Americans, not just his supporters, all Americans, and their decision. The outcome of this election is clear, and no amount of dust that Trump and his allies kick up is going to change that.
Hi everyone, this is Dr. Nitin Chora with Ignition Time and welcome to my channel. Thank you so much for being a viewer and a subscriber. We live in an unbelievable climate. Experts are actually warning that individuals should not travel, should not be gathering for Thanksgiving with multiple family members because this could dramatically worsen the surge. 50 million Americans, yes, 50 million Americans are expected to travel during this pandemic, and experts are urging Americans not to travel. This is just unbelievable. In addition to this, we have the president's personal attorney, Rudy Giuliani. He conducted a pretty detailed press conference today, and it was a pretty intense press conference where he actually told some reporters more than once, "You're lying." Let's get into the details right now. Also, by the way, before I get into what Rudy Giuliani said, I'll be reporting that the president actually made phone calls to Wayne County in Michigan to ask about how the election results were being certified. Just unbelievable what's going on in the country right now. Let's start with the news as far as Rudy Giuliani is concerned. Rudy Giuliani alleged in a pretty intense news conference today that, I quote, there was a centralized plan to carry out voter fraud across the country. And just again, unbelievable that he would say that. Now, keep in mind, Giuliani did not present any direct evidence of a massive fraud scheme, and I'm quoting from Fox News in case my viewers and subscribers believe that I'm quoting from a liberal outlet. I'm actually quoting from Fox News. While Giuliani did not present any direct evidence of a massive fraud scheme, Giuliani asserted that this is, I quote, the logical conclusion reached as a result of incidents that took place in certain states. And here's what Giuliani said. What I'm describing to you is a massive fraud, and this is what he said at the press conference. And at one point, Giuliani repeatedly told a member of the press, "You're lying." So Giuliani cited sworn affidavits in Pennsylvania and Michigan from poll workers who spoke about instructions they had received from their supervisors. He spoke about 100,000 absentee ballots in the state of Wisconsin. He said they should have been deemed invalid because there were no applications for them. Keep in mind that President Trump is trailing Joe Biden by 20,000 votes in the state of Wisconsin. So Giuliani said, if you count the lawful votes, Trump won Wisconsin. So this is what's going on right now. In fact, why don't we take a look at a clip from Rudy Giuliani? Let's see what some of the things Rudy Giuliani said in this pretty contentious press conference that took place today. Let's roll the tape.
We have statisticians willing to testify, and the very patriotic and brave American citizens that have come forward are extraordinary. Extraordinary number of people, extraordinary number of witnesses. And what emerged very quickly is there's not a singular voter fraud in one state. This pattern repeats itself in a number of states, almost exactly the same pattern, which to any experienced investigator, prosecutor, would suggest that there was a plan from a centralized place to execute these various acts of voter fraud, specifically focused on big cities, and specifically focused on, as you would imagine, big cities controlled by Democrats, and particularly focused on big cities that have a long history of corruption. The number of voter fraud cases in Philadelphia could fill a library. Just a few weeks ago, there was a conviction for voter fraud, and 2 weeks before that. And I've often said, I guess sarcastically, but it's true, the only surprise I would have found in this is if Philadelphia hadn't cheated in this election, because for the last 60 years, they've cheated in just about every single election. You could say the same thing about Detroit. Each one of these cities are cities that are controlled by Democrats, which means they can get away with anything they want to do. It means they have a certain degree of control over, certainly control the election board completely, and they control law enforcement. And unfortunately, they have some friendly judges that will issue ridiculously irrational opinions just to come out in their favor. Clearly illegal, clearly voter fraud, easily provable, hundreds of witnesses, maybe thousands.
Rudy Giuliani also said that new lawsuits could be coming in Arizona as well as New Mexico, where Biden leads President Trump by 100,000 votes. He also said a challenge could be coming in Virginia, where Biden leads by almost 500,000 votes. I'm not sure how they can overcome that deficit, but that's everything that Giuliani said. So I'm actually going to quote Giuliani here. Giuliani said during this news conference that President Trump is the victim of, I quote, a plan from a centralized place to execute various acts of voter fraud specifically focused on big cities controlled by Democrats. That's what Giuliani said. Giuliani specifically mentioned Philadelphia and Detroit. Wow. And Giuliani actually said that some people came from Camden, New Jersey to Philadelphia to, I quote, vote all the time. That's what Giuliani said. He said that the fraud extends to voting boards, law enforcement, and judges. I want to be clear. I want to be absolutely clear. Giuliani did not provide specific evidence. He made that allegation. He did hold up one affidavit, and he said he could not make public other affidavits because he said people would be harassed. That's what Giuliani said. This is pretty interesting that he held up one affidavit and said he can't make other affidavits available. And Sidney Powell said that the fraud was a communist plot that was associated with Venezuela, Hugo Chavez, George Soros, and the Clinton Foundation. Pretty incredible. Now keep in mind, I did do a news report earlier today where I talked about the Trump campaign dropping the remaining lawsuits in Michigan. So there was that report as well. But where things stand right now, some pretty serious, some pretty intense allegations made by Rudy Giuliani and other members from the Republican Party about the integrity of the election. So in the midst of all this, what has the president been up to? The Associated Press reported that a person familiar with the matter said President Trump reached out to the Wayne County, Michigan canvassers Monica Palmer and William Hartman on Tuesday evening. So 48 hours ago, President Trump actually reached out to these individuals in Wayne County in Michigan, where a lot of the election allegations are taking place. And the president reached out after the revised vote to express gratitude for their support. Then on Wednesday, both Palmer and Hartman signed affidavits saying that they believe the county vote should not be certified. So one day after talking to the president, these two canvassers basically said the county vote should not be certified. Then after that, the Washington Post reported that this is what Monica Palmer said, I quote, "I did receive a call from President Trump late Tuesday evening after the meeting." That's what Monica Palmer said. She's one of the two Republican members of the 4-member Wayne County Canvassing Board. And she also said he was checking in to make sure I was safe after hearing the threats and doxing that had occurred. Quite incredible. In fact, here's a headline of an article on your screen from the Washington Post. The headline reads, "Wayne County Republican who has to rescind her vote certifying election results says Trump called her." Now here's something interesting. President Trump also invited leaders from Michigan's Republican-controlled state legislature to meet with him tomorrow, Friday, in Washington, D.C. So President Trump did indeed make that invitation. And in case you're wondering why, here's the fact. The Republican-controlled state legislature could, if they wanted, in theory, step in to award all the 16 electoral college votes in Michigan if the state board of canvassers does not certify a winner. Now keep in mind, the state board of canvassers, if they don't certify a winner, then those 16 electoral college votes in theory could be reallocated by the Republican-controlled state legislature to President Trump. Now keep in mind, earlier this week, Michigan Senate Majority Leader Mike Shirkey, who's a Republican, said that Biden is the president-elect and that an effort to award Michigan's electoral votes to Trump is not going to happen. That's what he basically said. So I'm not sure if the president's efforts will lead to a shift in the direction of the certification of the votes in Michigan, but you can see what's going on and you can judge for yourself. Biden is winning the state of Michigan by a wide margin, by more than 148,000 votes, and the State Board of Canvassers is still scheduled to hold a hearing on Monday to certify the results in the state of Michigan. But I want to be clear, never in the history of our country have we had a president directly reach out to the officials who must certify the election results in favor of his opponent. So we've never seen that before in the history of our country. I just want our viewers and subscribers to be aware of that. Now, in affidavits that were signed on Wednesday evening in the past 24 hours, the two GOP members, the Republican members of the board, alleged that they were improperly pressured into certifying the election, and they accused Democrats of reneging on a promise to audit votes in Detroit. In an interview, Palmer estimated that she talked with the president for about 2 minutes, and she said she felt no pressure to change her vote, and she did say that she had received messages threatening her and her family this week. She said, and I quote, "His concern was about my safety, and that was really touching. He's a really busy guy, and to have his concern about my safety was appreciated." When she was asked if they had discussed the presidential vote count, she said, I quote, "It's hard for me to describe. There was a lot of adrenaline and stress going on. There were general comments about different states, but we really didn't discuss the details of the certification." She said, "It was not pressure. It was genuine concern for my safety." Now, I want to be clear, Jonathan Kinloch, who's a Democrat and the board's vice chairman, told the Washington Post that it's too late for the pair to actually reverse course, as the certified results have already been sent to the Secretary of State in accordance with state rules. So he lashed out at the Republicans over their request, and he said, "Do they understand how they are making us look as a body? We have such an amazing and important role in the democratic process, and they are turning it on its head." Now, I did report earlier today that the Trump campaign had dropped a lawsuit it had filed in federal court to block Michigan from certifying its election results. In explaining the move, Trump's lawyers actually said that the Wayne County Board had voted not to certify the county's results, which, by the way, is not correct. They did indeed vote to do that, but now we have these affidavits that are essentially creating some confusion publicly, and hopefully that's being made clear to you in this video. Now, here's a comment from Tracy Wimmer, who's a spokeswoman for Secretary of State Jocelyn Benson. She said there is no legal mechanism for them to rescind their vote. Their job is done, and the next step in the process is for the Board of State Canvassers to meet and certify. So we can expect the certification of the results in the state of Michigan next week. It's pretty incredible what's going on in the state of Michigan. The president getting involved, Rudy Giuliani also making some pretty intense accusations. Let me know what you think about all these developments in the comment section below. You'll find a link to all of our news sources in the description section below. Thank you so much for watching, everybody. My name is Dr. Nitin Choda with Ignition Time. If you don't know anything about me, please check out my video.
You know I'm a dreamer, but my heart's of gold. I had to run away high, so I wouldn't come home low. Just when things went right, it doesn't mean they were always wrong. Just take this song, and you'll never be left all alone. Take me to your heart, fill me in your bones.
again, the inbound by Rubio. Wiggins checked by Durant. Running off the screen. Wiggins will attack the basket, kick it out to the three-pointer. Rubio's got it! Ricky Rubio with 3. With 0.2 of a second remaining, and this ball game is over. Rubio, the 30% three-point shooter, but tonight he hits 3.
Alexi, change his face. Be happy. Enjoy it.
Change your face, says Ricky Rubio to Alexi Shved. Be happy, you'll enjoy it. And our entire crew has been telling that song to you for years. Change your face. Be happy.
Good evening and welcome to Tucker Carlson Tonight. Sometimes a single picture so perfectly crystallizes a moment that you want to hang it that, in fact, they run. So relax, people. No one's getting Rona here. That was the story. Now the photograph. We have the picture thanks to Fox 11 in Los Angeles, one of the rare local stations that still does reporting. It's a picture of the birthday dinner up in Napa. It turns out it was not held outside. It was held in a private room, and not a spacious private room either. All 12 people were packed in tight, shoulder to shoulder, breathing on each other. No social distancing here. Not one of them is wearing a mask. A steam room in central Wuhan could not be more contagious than this dinner. Gavin Newsom's birthday party was a germ factory, and his guests were human petri dishes. But what a guest list it was. Next to Governor Newsom sat the CEO of the California Medical Association, and one over from him, one of the state's top health lobbyists. Together, the two of them represent tens of thousands of physicians, credentialed men of science and women of science in the state of California. So if you're wondering why, if you live in California, you can't have Thanksgiving this year, or visit your mother as she dies alone in the hospital, it is because of them and people like them. And yet there they were, eating $300 truffle pasta and living like this pandemic thing never even happened. The picture of them doing it, known henceforth to history as the French Laundry photograph, is the year 2020 condensed to its essence. Here you have plutocrats dining with lobbyists, ignoring the very orders they're so self-righteously imposing on others, gorging themselves in seclusion as the people they're supposed to be helping wither and die. And then when they're caught, they lie about it. How perfect is that? It's all there, every element. Hypocrisy, greed, selfishness, stupidity. This is our national moment in a single picture. Move over, Dorothea Lange. So what's Gavin Newsom's explanation for this picture? Well, in the interest of equal time and fairness, we're going to show it to you now.
I made a bad mistake. Instead of sitting down, I should have stood up and walked back, got in my car, and drove back to my house. Instead, I chose to sit there with my wife and a number of other couples that were outside the household. And you can quibble about the guidelines, et cetera, but the spirit of what I'm preaching all the time was contradicted, and I got to own that. And so I want to apologize to you.
Oh, yeah. When I saw it, I should have just walked out, got in the car, and driven home. Okay, Gavin. So you had no idea there were going to be a dozen people at your own party. You're the governor, but you never saw the guest list. You were totally shocked. That's ridiculous. It's too stupid to be an explanation, and we are stupider for pretending to believe it. Why not just tell the truth, which is, I don't really totally believe everything I say, at least not enough to let it interfere with dinner. That's the truth. You know it. He knows it. But he's forcing us to play along with an absurd lie. On the other hand, at least Gavin Newsom didn't follow the lead of Nancy Pelosi and blame the restaurant. He didn't accuse the maitre d' of setting him up as part of a conspiracy among the famously right-wing restaurant community in Napa. The French Laundry probably won't suffer the same fate as Pelosi's hairstylist, at least as long as they stay quiet about it. And to his credit, Gavin Newsom didn't follow the example of Dianne Feinstein. Feinstein has refused to answer any questions as she parades around the halls of the United States Senate, his private airport terminal, FBOs, maskless and no explanation for that. And to be fair, once again, Gavin Newsom's explanation was still better than what his buddy, the lobbyist, the guy they're having a dinner for, has come up with. To his spokesman, he said, "Whoa, the guest specifically requested out." What the?
Since day one, Street Fighter has contained polarizing characters, the type who force you to play around their very specific tools. The classic examples of this are Dalsim and Zangief. With Sim, no matter who you pick, you need to navigate his wall of long limbs to get in and rush him down. Nearly everyone's game plan is the same, perhaps they achieve it in slightly different ways, but the outcome is 9 times out of 10 identical. You get in, get a knockdown, and try and abuse his lack of defensive options. This is a similar story with Zangief. Here you have to keep him out because his command grab mix-ups are too good and his damage output will destroy you in seconds. So you use fireballs or long range buttons to slowly chip away at his health while trying to react to all of his reads attempting to get into your face. It's hard to distinguish between what is polarizing and what is simply just a matchup though. You could for example say that Gull is polarizing because of his sonic boom, or Sin is because of his beak driver. And you wouldn't be wrong. These are tools you have to very specifically play around, but for me, I define a character as polarizing because I have to ignore big elements of how my character is supposed to play to win. When I'm fighting a Potemkin player, for example, sure I can rush down, but for most characters, the risk reward of him backdashing a string and command throwing outweighs the reward so heavily that you can't in good conscience do it. A character that fits into my definition of polarizing, which I find really interesting, is Street Fighter Alpha 2's Rose. There are a couple of things about Rose that are very notable which we need to establish before anything else. She is widely considered to be one of the best characters in the game with good reason. Her crouch medium punch alone makes her terrifying. It beats a lot of stuff. Like a lot of stuff. Basically it beats everything, and it's quick too, so good luck doing anything about it. Then you have her Soul Illusion Super, where she creates a copy of herself, allowing you to basically get free chip damage on a knockdown using drill. If an opponent tries to reversal it, they'll often trade and it will be in your favour, sometimes to an insane degree. There is even a whole host of bugs attached to it, such as unblockable slides or jump-ins that are invulnerable. It's completely obnoxious, and I'm not entirely sure why anyone thought it was a good idea. She's got amazing anti-airs, a good VIA CC, amazing meter building, good combos, but none of this is what makes her polarizing. It's her alpha counter. For those that have never played Alpha 2, let me TLDR the alpha counter system for this game. When in block stun, you can spend one level of meter to hit the opponent by doing a reverse quarter circle back motion. So back, down, and then hitting a button. You have two versions of this alpha counter, a kick version and a punch version. This often breaks down into some kind of DP or some kind of roundhouse, not always but often. It's invulnerable but easily safe jumped. You can do things around it like a light attack, then block the alpha counter or try and cancel into a special to get around it. It's a very inoffensive mechanic that is simply put a tool to get the opponent off you for a bit of meter that's relatively safe. This, however, is not the case for Rose. Her punch alpha counter is a grab, but not just any grab. This isn't an SPD that does a fixed amount of damage. No, this is a grab that puts the opponent behind you and allows for a combo after. This is messed up for so many reasons, and we're going to break down each of them and give a little bit of situational context to boot. Although this sits in the category of grab, it's also kind of not. It will connect with both a grounded opponent and an airborne opponent. Basically, everything that's in range, and the range on it is very good. So your typical strategy of things like safe jump setups will not work versus it. Then there is the side switch. Obviously, working someone to the corner is hard in any game, and then being able to defensively side switch because you have the gall to do an attack on block, immediately reversing all your hard work is powerful. Also, just due to the threat of alpha counter, it's going to alter how the opponent pressures you due to the risk, which in turn gives you far more opportunities to fight your way back to mid-screen. After this, like I said, she gets a combo. The standard combo that works on the majority of the cast is crouch medium punch into light drill. That's good for damage's sake, but it also builds a lot of meter. So much in fact that if you do 3 alpha counters with the combo, you end up with enough meter for another alpha counter. This isn't a fringe case, this happens all the time. Versus big characters, you can do an even better combo. Hitting a crouch heavy punch into a heavy drill to build even more meter and do even more damage. Or you can just cash everything in, activate custom combo for huge damage. There are even more options here, such as cancelling your soul illusion, granting you a potential unblockable. Basically, you can get whatever you can afford, and once again, this is because of a blocked move. Street Fighter Alpha 2 also has a glitch associated with the custom combo mechanic, which veers its ugly head a lot because of Rose. I'm not going to explain the custom combos in depth here, as I've done a video on it previously, but one thing I don't disclose there is when you activate this mechanic, you are forced to walk in the direction of your opponent upon startup. You can crouch to stop yourself, but even if the opponent jumps over you, you will not turn around. Named the inverted directions glitch, it occurs when you are knocked down just as you are landing or in the air during an activation. As you wake up, you won't get turned around for a couple of frames, and this means the opponent can do a meaty, but you have to block in the opposite direction. It's basically a cross up without crossing the opponent up. Although this happens sometimes, it's not a super common sight. Rose changes that. Her counter puts you in a kind of airborne frozen state. So if she alpha counters you during your activation, even when you're grounded, then knocks you down, she meets all the conditions needed for the glitch. Then she can follow up with a jumping attack that you have to block as a cross-up, an empty load that you have to block normally, a jump in followed by a delay grounded attack that you have to block cross-up then normally. It's a cherry on top of an already amazing tool, and a big one because you will be blocking custom combos all the time as people attempt to via CC you. You might be thinking that this sounds less polarizing and more just broken, which is honestly a pretty reasonable conclusion, but there are ways to fight against Rose's alpha counter. Sort of. Firstly, the obvious limitation of this move is that it's meter dependent. This is an older game, so although you do gain meter from being hit, it's not as much as you might be prone to expect. So rushing her down does work, especially considering she does not have a meterless reversal. The most important thing though is how this move is done. Once again, it's a reverse quarter circle back motion. This small detail is the only thing in my mind keeping it from being completely busted. When you hit Rose with an individual light attack, if she wants to counter it, she has to be impossibly quick due to this motion. Her reactions have to be so on point it tips into the side of a read. With this level of reaction, it means that she has to be solely looking for your light attack. What this allows for is a mix-up. Walk up throw, overheads, delaying your attacks, all become incredibly viable because she's focused on one individual defensive option. If you were to say do 2 lights in a row or a medium attack, obviously this is going to be easier for her to deal with. So you don't give her that opportunity and you tick throw her. This is why it's polarizing. It adds a level of danger to your strings that normally doesn't exist, meaning you can't just rely on pre-programmed muscle memory. You constantly have to mix up your options, not only for damage sake, but to give her enough visual noise that 100% successful reactions stop being viable. There is also no way for her to safely do an alpha counter unless it's successful. The motion ends with a down input, meaning there is always going to be a point where she's not blocking. So if you force her into a position where she's making more reads than the reactions, you can punish her. Now she can do things like option select into a fireball, which is good, but still gives you a window for counter attack. It's very easy to look at this and feel like it shouldn't exist, that the ways of dealing with it aren't direct enough for it to be enjoyable. However, I